As I shape this clay, I realize life is not formed by what we accumulate, but by what we let go.
Many of my friends, especially my relatives, often see me as eccentric, unusual. But I think, of course I am perfectly normal. What others think of you may sometimes matter, but not always. When I was young, I used to worry a lot about my appearance, constantly concerned with what others thought of me. It made me feel anxious more than once. But as I grew older and gradually matured, and it took me a very long time to truly mature, I realized that it doesn't matter at all. As long as you do not offend or harm anyone, what others think of you makes no real difference. They may call me eccentric, they may think I'm a little odd, but that really doesn't matter. What about you? Have you ever worried too much about what others think and then realized it doesn't really matter? Share your story below. I'd love to read it. At this age, what truly gets me out of bed every morning is no longer the desire for money, fame, or the luxuries that people often chase throughout their youth. I wake up with a simple yet powerful longing. I want to continue being useful to others, to make sure that each passing day carries some kind of value, no matter how big or small. I have always believed that a meaningful life is not one that is filled with possessions, but one that can bring benefit, comfort, and joy to those around us. That is why I still keep the habit of working with my hands, even though I am old and my strength is not what it used to be. I spend my time repairing old wooden items, restoring broken chairs, or bringing back to life household objects that seemed ready to be discarded. Each piece of wood, every nail, every new layer of polish feels as if I am breathing new life into it. What makes me happy is not the material value of those objects, but the feeling of seeing something once considered useless become valuable and functional again. That feeling brings me a deep joy, a joy that is difficult to replace with anything else. When I look at a chair that once was broken but now stands firm, or at a table that once looked worn but now shines again, I feel a sense of satisfaction rising within me. It feels as though I have given a soul back to something lifeless, allowing it to continue serving people for many more years. I believe that this work, seemingly small and ordinary, gives me a very clear sense of the meaning of my existence. Because as we grow older, it is easy to feel useless, to think we no longer contribute. Yet, through these simple crafts, I know that I can still play a part, even a small one, in creating something good. And that, to me, is proof that my existence still holds value, that I am not yet cast aside by life. In fact, every time I finish a piece, I remind myself that perhaps it is through these simple acts that I feel my life continues in a complete and fulfilling way. I do not need anything more, because true meaning is not found in outward displays, but in the quiet joy of knowing I am still useful to the world. Throughout my life, I have come to understand an important lesson. Money is only necessary in amounts sufficient to live, to cover essential needs, to keep life from falling into hardship. Beyond that, money no longer brings peace or joy. On the contrary, it often invites trouble, anxiety, and even restlessness. I have seen many people with great wealth who could not live a single day in true tranquility. They were haunted by the need to protect, preserve, and multiply their riches. And in the process, they lost the lightness and simplicity that life can offer. I chose to live differently, to embrace simplicity and lightness. I live with a small kitchen, furnished only with the essentials needed for daily cooking and living. I do not buy many electronic devices, nor do I chase modern gadgets or luxurious conveniences. I know that the more things you accumulate, the more burdens you carry, and the more chains you place upon yourself. A simple life, on the other hand, gives the soul freedom and space to breathe. People are often surprised when they visit my home and see so few possessions. Yet for me, a stove, a table, a few chairs, and a small refrigerator are enough. I do not feel deprived. On the contrary, I feel relieved not to be surrounded by things I neither need nor use. I find joy in sitting in that modest kitchen, preparing a simple meal, and spending time on what truly matters rather than worrying over luxurious objects. For me, happiness does not come from possessions, nor from expensive items or the glitter others admire. True happiness comes from serving someone else, from bringing joy or comfort even in the smallest of ways. When I help a neighbor repair an old chair, when I share a humble meal filled with care, or when I simply listen and offer a few kind words, I feel joy spreading quietly within me. This is the kind of happiness that endures, the kind that money can never buy. Living simply does not mean living in lack. It means knowing what is enough. When we know what is enough, we are no longer swept away by endless comparisons and desires. Instead, we can devote our minds to what holds real value: connection, love, and generosity. I believe that a simple life, anchored in the sense of enough, is the foundation for finding serenity and true joy. And it is in this simplicity that I have discovered freedom and the kind of happiness that feels genuine and lasting. What do you think? Does living simply and knowing what is enough truly bring more happiness than having more? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. What I have realized most clearly in old age is that the greatest danger is not the weakening of the body, the dimming of eyesight, the fading of hearing, or the loss of physical strength. Those are natural laws that no one can escape. What is far more troubling is when the mind becomes rigid, when we close the doors of thought and are no longer willing to accept different perspectives. A frail body may slow us down, but a closed mind impoverishes life, weighs it down, and strips it of meaning. I always remind myself to keep my heart open, to learn to listen, and to respect the differences of others. The world will never exist in only one viewpoint or one single truth. Every person carries their own experiences, circumstances, and thoughts. What is right for me may not be right for someone else, and vice versa. Therefore, learning tolerance and accepting the diversity of perspectives is what keeps me feeling young, still learning, and still growing. I have seen many people who, as they grow older, cling stubbornly to old beliefs, refusing to listen to the younger generation, dismissing any opposing opinions. They become lonely because they build walls between themselves and the world. I do not want to take that path. I want my mind to remain flexible, to be able to admit that I do not know everything, that I still have much to learn from others, even from those younger and less experienced. True maturity, I believe, is not when we know it all, but when we can admit there are things we do not know and remain willing to learn. For me, maturity never has an endpoint. It is not a destination, but a continuous journey. I have lived through many decades, experienced joy, sorrow, loss, and fulfillment. Yet I still see the need to keep learning. I still find myself needing to change, to adjust, to become more tolerant every day. Every conversation, every relationship, every moment of listening is another chance to grow a little more. And I believe that until the day I close my eyes, I will still be on that path of growth. This mindset helps me see old age not as a full stop, but as a precious time to refine the heart, to practice tolerance, to enrich the soul. I am not afraid of growing old. I am only afraid of becoming rigid, of losing the ability to love and respect differences. Because when that happens, even if the body is alive, the soul has already withered. On the other hand, if my mind remains open, if I can still smile at the diversity of life, then I believe I am still living a life of true meaning. In life, no one can escape facing loss and separation. It is the law of being human, a truth that we must accept whether we want to or not. Those we love will eventually leave, or we ourselves will have to leave them. Loss brings with it a pain that lingers, sometimes striking fiercely, making the heart feel as though it cannot rise again. Yet no matter how deep the grief, time continues to move forward, and we are forced to learn how to live on with memory. The pain never fully disappears. It only settles, woven into each breath and every ordinary moment. Each time we remember, the heart still aches, but we also learn how to smile when recalling what once was. That is how people learn to go on, not by forgetting, but by living with memory, by making loss a part of themselves. I believe that in this life there are things we can understand and things we will never comprehend. We can understand the workings of nature, the aging of the body, illness, and even death as a biological process. But there is one great question that humanity has never been able to answer. What truly happens after we leave this world? Some believe in rebirth, some believe the soul returns to another realm, while others think everything simply ends. As for me, I cannot claim certainty, because I know there are truths that human intellect will never fully grasp. I only sense that death is not a complete ending. I believe there is some form of existence beyond that threshold, a continuation in a way that we cannot explain. Even without full understanding, this belief brings me peace when I think about death or remember those who are gone. When faced with loss, I do not choose to deny it or bury the pain, because I know that is impossible. I let it remain as a part of my life, a reminder that love once existed and continues within memory. I look back on the past with gratitude, grateful that I had those precious moments with the ones I loved. And those very memories, even wrapped in sorrow, become the strength that allows me to keep living. When I think about the day I will leave this world, I do not feel overwhelming fear. I see it as a natural journey, just as being born was. What matters is not to desperately search for an exact answer about what comes after death, but to live well in the time we are given. If each day is lived fully, sincerely, with love, then when the time comes to close my eyes, I can rest knowing my life left a mark. For me, loss has taught that life is fragile and precious. It reminds me to cherish each moment, every relationship, every simple day. It has shown me that living is not about accumulating more, but about giving more, so that when we depart, what remains is not possessions, but love, memories, and trust. I cannot know for certain what awaits beyond death, but I know that if one has lived with love, whatever comes next will not be frightening. Loss and death may be darkness, but memory and faith are the light that helps us carry on. If you've also faced loss and learned to keep living with memories, I invite you to share your story in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe to Next Chapter 50 so we can continue finding light beyond the shadows together. I find comfort in knowing that what I create and leave behind will continue to live on even after I am gone. Whether it is a sturdy wooden chair made for my children and grandchildren, or the thoughts, lessons, and values I have shared with others, these things have a life beyond my own. They remind me that our existence is not confined to the length of our days, but extends through the marks we leave on people, places, and objects. When I see something I have built or repaired still being used, or when someone recalls words I once spoke that gave them strength, I realize that a part of me carries on through those connections. This gives me a sense of peace. I am not afraid of death itself. What I fear instead is the possibility of living too long when I am no longer useful. To me, a life without purpose is not truly living. As long as I can still contribute, even in small ways, I feel alive. But if the day comes when I cannot be of service, when I cannot create, support, or share, that thought does not frighten me, but it clarifies what matters most: usefulness, meaning, and connection. Death, when it comes, is simply a natural part of the human journey. Just as birth is the beginning, death is a transition that no one can avoid. To resist it or to live in fear of it is pointless. What we can do instead is live in such a way that when death arrives, we are ready to accept it with calmness. I see death not as an enemy, but as a stage in life's cycle. My body, like everything else in nature, has a limit. When it reaches that limit, it will stop. And that is as it should be. There is no need to cling desperately to more years if those years lack vitality, usefulness, or dignity. To me, the true measure of a life is not how long it lasts, but how it is lived and what is left behind. That is why I focus on leaving behind things that matter. A piece of furniture I crafted may last decades, serving as a quiet reminder of my presence. A lesson I taught or a story I shared may echo in someone's mind long after I am gone. The kindness I showed to others may inspire them to show kindness in return. These are the legacies that matter to me. They are not grand monuments or worldly achievements, but simple, enduring traces of a life lived with intention. Knowing this helps me to let go of the fear of death. I do not need immortality. I only need to trust that the best parts of who I am will remain in the lives I touched. My attitude toward death is one of acceptance. It is neither something to rush toward nor something to resist. It will come when the time is right, when the body has given all it can. Until then, my task is to live as fully as possible, to create, to serve, to love, and to leave behind something meaningful. And when the moment arrives, I hope to meet it with the same calmness with which I have tried to live, knowing that death is not an erasure, but a continuation of life's natural rhythm. Happiness, to me, has never come from having great amounts of money, possessions, or fame. I have realized that those things only lead people to more worries and endless desires, never allowing them to feel truly satisfied. Real happiness lies in simplicity, in knowing what is enough and cherishing what we already have. A modest meal filled with love, a small home that feels warm, a peaceful heart, these are the true forms of wealth. I believe that living with a sense of enough does not mean living in lack, but choosing freedom from unnecessary burdens. More importantly, happiness is found in being useful to others, in offering help, kindness, and joy. When we leave this world, what remains is not the amount of wealth we have gathered, but the values, love, and memories we have planted in the hearts of others. That is the greatest legacy we can leave behind, and it is also the path to lasting happiness.